And hello. Welcome everyone. Welcome to week 3 of the No One Asked podcast. I'm Ethan.
I'm Brock. And first of all, we'd once again like to thank you for tuning in last week and getting involved with the podcast. The feedback we got on our Instagram page and stuff, it was much appreciated, and we're glad to get that fan interaction. For any of you that listen to the podcast but are not following the Instagram page, we are No One Asked _podcast if you'd like to go follow us. We have regular weekly updates and, a bunch of fan interaction questions we throw out to you guys, so get involved with that.
Yeah, we really appreciate the feedback and the content, the way that we can get feedback, any way that we can get it, we use it. So we've put the aspects that we got feedback on into the show this week. So we're really thankful for that. And yeah, follow the Instagram if you're not already following it.
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, this week, I throw it to Ethan. What do we think of the Australian game over the weekend?
Well, I just want to start by saying, honestly, I'll never lose interest in being a Wallabies fan, and I don't care if they win or if they lose, but it's like games on the weekend where I genuinely thought we could win that hurt the most.
Yep.
Just the whole week before, it was all positivity. One of the things that pisses me off with Aussie rugby is, if the Wallabies do shit, there's a shit ton of ha-ha reacts on every single post they make, the week after. Even if it was, a decent... they played, fucking Wales or some shit.
Yep.
And then they lose.
And
everyone...
They could play really well too, but no one cares about it whatsoever. They just want to take the piss and make a mockery out of Australia.
Yeah, exactly. And, it annoys me. And then that week after we beat the All Blacks, how we did... It's the first time I haven't seen a haha react on a single post the whole week. I was stunned by it. And then, I genuinely thought with the way we played in Perth, how well we played and what we did, that we would win. And I just got let down.
Yeah, Perth seems to be a bit of a holy grail for us. We're playing pretty well there. But, once again, we headed over to Eden Park and once again didn't get the result, and unfortunately in embarrassing fashion.
Yeah. It is. It really is embarrassing. And, you talk about Eden Park, I think it should be, illegal for the All Blacks to play anyone but Kiwis in that place because there is such a voodoo for everyone.
Yeah.
And just stadiums where teams have advantages, there is something in that,
The question is, what happens when someone does finally beat them there? Does the stadium, crumble to nothing? Or does the team, that beat them get their names written in heaven or something?
They really should, because even the Blues, who have been the shittest team in Super Rugby or the shittest Kiwi team for ages,
yep.
They had a 15, 16 game streak of being unbeaten at home.
Yeah.
Against non-Kiwi teams. No one else could beat them but other Kiwi teams.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's pretty ridiculous. I guess that continues to show just the dominance of Kiwi rugby. Their worst team just embarrasses half the teams in the rest of the competition, but,
Yeah. It's ridiculous, honestly. But I think the biggest thing for me, the 3 biggest takeaways I got from watching that game was if we start like shit, we play like shit, and our first kickoff barely went 10, and then we recovered it somehow and got tackled straight out for a line out to the All Blacks.
Yep.
And the forwards were none of them wanted to work off the ball on Saturday night. None of them wanted to work off the ball like they did the week before in Perth. It was Hooper, and Liam Wright sort of did some stuff when he come off the bench for 10 minutes in his debut, but everyone else was lazy.
Yeah.
And then our kick chase. And I think if we want to do something at the World Cup, our kick chase has to be good like it was in Perth. Our forwards actually have to, every other forward besides Hooper actually has to want to work. And we have to start. And we have to be on top early because the way that we play, you can't come back. That's not comeback footy. And you've seen that. That's one of the things I noticed is when it got to the 50th, 60th minute, even just after half time, after they put 2 tries on us and they were up 24-0, it's we were forcing it, and we can't force it with the way we play. It's not something where the Kiwis can just throw it too wide and then they score, and then they score 3 tries in 15 minutes. We have to be in the game, and like I said, we just started like shit. Christian Liliafano missed 2 penalties in the first 20 minutes. That would have put us up 10-6 at least. You know, after the All Blacks' first try. I mean, sorry, that would have put the score at 10-6, yeah, or 6-3, yeah.
It would have been 6-3 at the time, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just shit like that. Just the forwards not working is so annoying because the week before everyone wanted to work. And I mean, we did get really lucky. That's one of the things I took note of when I watched the game in the first game against the All Blacks in Perth was how lucky we got. And I counted 6 or 7 or 8 times where we got a pass that normally doesn't stick.
Yeah.
We got none of that at Eden Park.
Yeah.
We didn't get any luck.
And the passes that did stick last week didn't stick this week. And they happened in the game resulted in interception. And yeah, it was New Zealand scoring, not us. But yeah, I think after, the 2 early penalty kicks were missed, it seemed like straight after that we just ran out of energy, and from that point on, that's when New Zealand just started dominating and were putting points on points on points. Like,
yeah,
it's like we so quickly ran out of faith after those 2 misses, and we just had nothing after that, which I don't know, it's hard to see, it's hard to watch.
It is. That's the biggest thing that I've sort of been skeptical of Lely with, is if he starts shit, and this is a problem too with a lot of the Aussie number 10s. Actually, ironically, Bernard Foley is the only one that really doesn't fall to it, is if they start shit, the rest of their game, they're shit.
Yeah.
They're not like a Kiwi or a South African 10 where they might miss a couple tackles first, but then they're in that play in the last, at least in the second half, they're back as a different person. Like, our 10s seem to, if they start shit, just drop their head, and then the whole team runs off that, and then they all just drop their head.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If your number 10 goes missing, like, you're in a world of hurt. Like, that's your playmaker. So when they don't perform, it's tough for the entire back line, and, your forwards end up working for nothing. But, yeah, I definitely agree that even after everything Bernard Foley copped, like, everyone just wanted his head. Everyone wanted him out of the team. He was a safe, secure option week in, week out that never really faltered. Like, he isn't amazing. He's so far from it. And it's hard to watch when you got Beauden Barrett on the other side, like when he was playing 10, just showing him up. But it's a bit of an unfair comparison.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think Bernard Foley was definitely good. Whether it was his time, maybe not. But we need to see someone better step up to it as well before we go asking for anyone's heads too.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's the thing that sort of made Foley so justifiable, was like, you're not going to get spectacular, but you're getting consistent.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to he's not the guy that's going to win you a game, but he can do what he needs to do. And he did it every week.
And that was the same, like, this going back a while, but like 2013, 2014, I think it was 2014. Like, I went to one of the Reds Tars games, I think it was.
Yeah.
But it was when Hooper was playing in Australia. I mean, not Hooper, sorry. Just completely lost it. James O'Connor was playing in Australia. And that's what it was. Yeah. James O'Connor just played this nice, safe game. And he didn't look that great, but he didn't make a mistake. And you had Quade Cooper, on the other hand, who was, up and down. Like, he'd make an amazing play and then just do something stupid. And it was like, what would you rather? And that's kind of what we've got in Australia. We've either got a big hit and miss at 10 who will play an exceptional game, and we're like, oh, how have we ever gone a game without him? But then they don't perform for the next 3 weeks. So, yeah, it's tough. We just haven't had anyone to step up to that plate for a long time now, and that's why we haven't won a Bledisloe for the last 17 years, and it's gone wayward again.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. It's right. Even look at Quade this year. Like, I really think he should have been in the Wallaby squad, perhaps over Foley.
It was an interesting option, yeah.
But I mean, in the same regard, like, Quade started red hot the whole first half of the season, and then him and the rest of the Rebels just dropped off that cliff, which just proves again, like, if your 10's not performing, particularly in Aussie rugby with the way we set up, as like how much shit we run off the number 10, like, we just fall apart. And that happened to the Rebels, and it happened to us on Saturday night. And I mean, as bad as it might sound, I just want to say, like, even though the forwards weren't working off the ball, a lot of the Kiwi turnovers that they got and a lot of their tries were off, like, handling errors, or like forward runners would actually do well but then be isolated because no one wanted to work.
Yeah.
Like, we were getting go forward, no one was supporting.
Yeah, that's
and
what
we'd
I
either
saw.
throw it away or lose it.
It was a lot of isolation that I saw. in the game that went by, which is just sloppy rugby. And
it is.
It's understandable why we're, having so many losses when, it's simple stuff like that we're not getting right.
Yeah, it is. And that's just the most disappointing thing is, the way we played against Argentina and then, we toughed it out and then we go and beat New Zealand, I genuinely thought we'd turned a corner this year, but obviously it's just back to the same old Wallabies where they give you a bit of hope and then rip it away.
But yeah, that's exactly what we said last week, and I think it's more so an All Blacks thing, but whenever Australia beat New Zealand always hit 10 times harder when they come back, and that's exactly what happened.
Oh, yeah.
We went last week, and it was our biggest win ever that we ever had against the All Blacks, and they come back this week and just embarrass us, and went from 21-point win last week to 36 points and keeping us to donut. They come back so much harder than we hit them, and it's just ridiculous.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, whoever spoke to Ardie Zavia during the week did a bloody good job, because he was just as aggressive as he was last week, but he wasn't doing the off-the-ball stuff. That's one of the things you have to admire with the Kiwis is they're so humble, or they'll know when they had a played game or played a shit game or did something that hurt the team, and they just immediately fix it for the next week.
Yep. Next week it's fixed, no doubt about it.
Yeah. And it was just disappointing. When I was watching the game for the first time live on Saturday night, I didn't think we were doing as well as we did, but I mean, that's the thing, that's just what happens with us is if we start shit, we fall apart, and then we can't force it, and then we just turnovers lead to tries for the All Blacks. They were bloody good. It's just New Zealand.
Yeah, they always are.
You can't expect any different.
Yep, absolutely. But so, as we've got feedback this week, a lot of people wanted us to focus on Australian sports, which we're going to do, and we're going to try and break down a lot of the issues and what we think personally of it. But so I think we're just going to keep going with this, and we're going to continue with Australian rugby. What do you think is the issue? And I think both as a team as a whole and individual players, what needs to change for the Wallabies?
Well, I think, and this is probably going to sound I think I might be one of the few people that actually thinks this, but I genuinely believe that this squad could win a World Cup. Just the form that some of the players in key positions that we have played this year in Super Rugby and did well, and then just the consistency of Hooper, and then I'm talking about guys like Rory Arnold as our lock, and Scott Seo and Alan Alatoa. Obviously, I'm naming all Brumbies players, but they were the best Super Rugby side this year.
Yeah, for sure.
And then even Lely at 10, he was really solid for the Brumbies and obviously did well in the first Bledisloe. And then Semu Karevi, he was amazing on Saturday. Oh, well, not amazing, but he was really solid on Saturday night. It's just, I think we have the people that have proven that they can do well against Kiwis and against the best in the Super Rugby, and something's just not clicking. And I think that's the problem is, I really don't know what, but I just think everyone else, you look at New Zealand and you know who their star players are, and everyone else tries to be as good as them.
Yep.
You look at us and everyone else tries to backpack off the best players if nothing's going their way.
Yeah, that's definitely the case.
And I think that's the on-the-field issue. And then the off-the-field issue is, because of that, our teams can perform inconsistently in Super Rugby. No one shows up to watch. There's no money in Super Rugby. So then they take all the money that the Wallabies get, and then there's no money for Wallabies. No one shows up for the Wallabies. And then we have players flying out the door like we do. I've actually been meaning to speak. Just let me pull this up. We have so many players, like I just mentioned, in key positions leaving at the end of the year. We're losing Rory Arnold. We're losing Adam Coleman. Pocock's obviously leaving. Will Genia and Christian Liliafano are both going to Japan. So is Samu. The issues that we have where our best players become good and then either leave because we just don't have the money because no one's showing up. It's hurting us, and it's going to continue to hurt us. And that's it. Just no one performs consistently in Aussie rugby, and it just ends up hurting us.
Yeah, there's certainly no consistency. And like we've said before, it's definitely, the team revolves around Michael Hooper, and as much as people tend to disagree with that and, want Pocock in the side in particular, or just a change of Hooper in general, he just is a workhorse in this team, and he does absolutely everything. And even, you watch one of New Zealand's tries, I can't remember which one it was because there was so many, unfortunately. You watch Hooper goes over. Actually, I think it was when they took the ball. I think they had a turnover right on our line.
Mm-hmm.
And Hooper gets cleared out, ends up on the ground, and they pass it one wide, goes straight over the top, and we try to hold it up and didn't make it. But Hooper is the first one to come over the top and was trying to hold that up besides the man who made the tackle. And it's like he's gone from being on the ground, getting cleared out, to now helping and trying to hold this ball up. And unfortunately, he was like half a second too late to do anything anyway. But he's just everywhere. So he's the core of our team. And yeah, like you said, everyone tries to piggyback off him because he is in every breakdown. He's in every ruck. He's always asking to receive the ball. Everyone's just like, oh, we'll let Hooper do it and we'll just sit back and support him, I guess. Which is just such a bad philosophy to begin with.
It is.
But I think our forward pack, besides, obviously, like we've said already, they're actually a really good forward pack. Like, year in, year out, I watch them and I think they get better and better, and we are so much more competitive each year, especially to the All Blacks. But it's just not consistent. Like, that's our biggest issue.
Mm-hmm.
There's no consistency with our forward pack. They play one game, perform so well, and we back them to the moon, and the next week they don't even rock up to play.
Yeah.
So,
and like,
I don't know.
And that's just one of the things that you look at and you go, like, you can't, there's no way anyone can physically coach that, is players actually turning up consistently. Like, you can say, you got to have a big game again this week, and you can, and I don't, like, you can hear me. I don't know what we can do for that.
Yeah.
It's just, it's got to be the players just, and I hate to say wanting, because I feel like everyone that, like, plays pro sport wants it. Like, everyone wants to do well and wants to win, but you just have to want it, you know? Like, I don't know what else it can be. You just have to want to perform every week and stop fucking backpacking off Michael Hooper.
Yeah.
I don't know how this man has done it. He has been playing like every Wallabies game, every Waratahs game since 2012 or some shit. I don't know how he hasn't burned out. I mean, he still looks in the best shape, or nearly in back to the best shape athletically anyway, of his career right now, I reckon.
I don't know how he hasn't burnt out or copped a huge injury. Like you said, he's there every single game.
Touch wood.
Touch wood. He should have had a serious injury. Usually if someone is playing that many games at that high of a level, they cop a injury eventually, but he just hasn't seemed to hit that wall. So, you know, that's excellent for us. But yeah, I think we have issues in key positions, and I think it's our spine in general. Like, Lely's good, and like we said last week, he was exceptional, and this week he didn't perform. But we need someone more consistent, but we can't. We've been asking that for the longest time. Someone needs to step up to that, and we're yet to see who has the ability to do that.
Yeah.
So we can't blame Lely or Bernard Foley or anyone in particular. We just don't actually have that right now, which hurts us tremendously. Like, if we had a Bowden Barrett sitting there at 10 for us, like the Kiwis do, we're a completely different team, in my opinion. Like, we have someone who can actually run that backline really well, because we have good weapons out wide. Like, there's no doubt about that. We are a strong team at our outside backs. It's just getting them in good positions for it, and we end up usually doing too much out wide to make it work.
Yeah, exactly.
And my other big issue, in my opinion, is Kurtley Beale. He is one of those players that 1 out of every 5 games, he will prove me so wrong and play exceptionally well and go, maybe I've been wrong for bagging him out for so long and thinking he shouldn't even be close to the Wallabies team. But that's it. It's 1 in every 5 games that I think he actually performs at that level. And, you know, not to dive too deep into it, we have someone who should be playing there. We're not going to mention names, but unfortunately isn't playing there anymore. So that's a kind of easy hole to fill, but we're not able to at the moment. But I think it also just comes back to the amount of people who, and this is coming back to the problem off the field, we just don't have enough people actually wanting to play rugby union anymore. And, you know, us being located in Brisbane, we have the GPS competition here, which is the private school, number one schoolboys competition. And the amount of players, for example, most recent and biggest name, Kalen Ponga, is a rugby union boy. And he is through and through, but we see him transferring to rugby league because they're actually getting people out there watching him and scouting them from rugby league and offering them money off the get-go and giving them a reason to leave rugby union no matter how much they love the game.
Yeah.
And
sorry, I just want to bump in. Do you want to know the most messed up thing about Kalen Ponga?
What's that?
Churchy recruited him from league. So he's actually a leaguey that Churchy brought in just to win, and then he goes back to league. So and I'll let you finish first.
Continue on that if you have more to say.
Well, the biggest thing that annoys me about the GPS comp, and not to have a go at it, is I think scouts in rugby got so lazy and just went, there's these really rich private schools bringing in all these players. We only need to go here. And then that's the GPS comps just want to win that. They don't actually give a shit about footy.
No,
I think everyone that goes to a GPS school likes rugby, but you look at it like, who do you see at Reds games that's an ex-GPS kid?
Yeah.
Like you might see one or two out of a whole fucking cohort that cared so much about footy. They just care about the school. And I respect that. You can do what you want, but you're not like, do they realize what they're doing to rugby by, like, they're ruining the sustainability of it just by bringing in people or bringing in anyone just to win for the school, and then they don't care where they go after.
But that's rugby union in general. Like,
yeah,
you have so many people playing in their younger years and they just lose interest for whatever reason. It's not for us to specifically know, but so quickly they run out the other door and they have no interest to play long term.
Yeah.
But there's so many people, whether they did have the league upbringing like Kalen Ponga, but, you look at the New South Wales team of this year and you've got Angus Crichton and Cameron Murray, who were both in the New South Wales, both at Sydney schools, I think Kings and someone else, I can't remember off the top of my head, who once again are both rugby union boys and now making State of Origin level football and league that, were scouted from a rugby union school, but obviously union scouts or teams haven't given a crap enough to actually, bring them to the highest level of sport. So they've gone to another code.
And another thing with that, I think Angus Crichton actually got overlooked by the Waratahs. They said, I think it was Checker was coaching at the time and said, we'll sit you on the bench for another 2 years, then you'll be ready. And he said, well, bugger that, I'm going to... And just obviously to go down another thing is, you look at NRL, there's how many teams is there? 20? 16, sorry. And then, so there's 15 Aussie teams?
Yeah, 15 Aussie teams. And
there's 15 Aussie teams where you can make as much money as you can in the now 4 rugby union teams professionally. And I mean, it's not as hard... let's be reasonable here. I'm definitely going to choose the sport where I have 4 times the chance to make a squad than the other option. Even as much as I love rugby, if it comes down to the fact that I've been overlooked by people in union and I can go to this other sport where I have 4 times the chance of making a team and making the same money anyway, I'm going to do that. And I think that's just one of the things is we don't have the money to poach people or to make it look like just be interesting, and there's just not as many opportunities.
Yeah, there's certainly not as many opportunities, and especially, just continuing with Angus Crichton, it's like he has to look around and there's 9 rugby league Sydney teams that are directly located in that Sydney region or relatively close. That's not even including Newcastle, which isn't a huge distance away.
Yeah.
Compared to the one Waratahs team.
For the whole of New South Wales.
Exactly. So, yeah, there's definitely that downfall. And, that's where we bring in talks. And we've had these chats before, should we cut back to just Australian rugby and not face South Africa and Argentina and Japan and maybe keep it with New Zealand? But, we have a just Australian competition for us to play in. Is that going to work a lot better for bringing more people in and actually growing the game in general? Or
well
I don't know.
This is I think it would. In all honesty, I really think it would.
Or do
I
we
just think
go the second grade so we still have Waratahs, Reds, those level. But we have the second division, but it's more well known. And if they could televise it, but that's another reason why rugby union is so sold out nowadays, because they sold themselves to Fox, and now no one, the majority of people cannot watch rugby union on a week to week basis, because it's either played at a stupid time in the morning because we're playing a team in South Africa or Argentina, or it's not on because it's not on regular pay TV. It's on pay TV and not just regular TV.
Yeah, no, you're right. And this is the thing, you think about it, and I just think the best way to go, and the option that I like the most, is an Australian club team like the NRC with more Pacific Nations teams.
Yeah.
I really think that, because if we can, I really feel like we have so many good athletes in Australia, and union scouts and union coaches always overlook it. They always want to, I feel like no one molds to pick, everyone picks the players that they want. They don't pick the players that they have. And you look at this now, buddy, Michael Checker's just left Tom Banks, who was one of the quickest, one of the most electric, one of the best fullbacks in, easily probably the best fullback in Aussie rugby this year, and then probably one of the better ones in Super Rugby. He's left him at home for the World Cup because Checker doesn't know how to use him.
Yeah.
And you just look at that and you think, well, you're taking, he's taking Adam Ashley Cooper or something instead. And it's just friggin' mold your tactics to the guy. Don't force him into your team. And this is such a thing. We're wasting players, but I do think that, I think if we can get to a competition where it still allows the local clubs to work and it's just Aussie teams, I think it could work. Because you think about it, you look at how good the NRL is, and I mean, I guess it's a bit of a unfair comparison since there's not as many international teams, but you have so many Aussies playing against Aussies, and we still dominate in the international stage.
Yeah.
That's the thing that everyone always talks about, is if we don't play the Kiwis, we're just going to turn to shit. But I don't think you are. You think about how much more confidence that gives a squad of guys that they're beating other Aussies, and how much more change it'd be in the competition, instead of just looking at it and say, oh, it'll be the Waratahs or the Brumbies this year. The Reds are still shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just changes so much, and I think we do need to. But that's the thing, we don't have the money, because no one's had the interest for years, and we've done the thing. We shot ourselves in the head with the Fox deals, not putting it on free to air to give anyone an opportunity, not even guaranteeing that we'd get views. So no one's interested. We're not performing well. We're not getting the money. We just don't have the money to do what we need to do.
Which then, reduces attendance. So we're not getting people actually going to games and watching, which I'm sure they would have hoped for, but that's not happening on the other end of things as well. So it's just a downfall everywhere.
It is. It really is. And I mean, I sort of getting into it, just another thing, just to sort of go off again, well, not go off, but go off the path again, is I think about the league, and I just think about Australia, and our problem with sport is that we're so in between. Where our population is big but small compared to everyone else.
Oh, our population's tiny.
Yeah, and we're such a vast nation. You look at New Zealand, New Zealand's small, it's got a relatively small population, and then they focus on two sports. They focus on cricket and rugby union, if I'm right. And we spoke about this in the first podcast. We have so many different people playing different sports. I think, and this is just more generalized, not just specifically about rugby, is we just have too many people doing too much with not enough money to fund it in Australia. And I was thinking about, I don't understand how we're as good in the cricket as we are. Because, you look at all the other teams, you look at India, they have 1 billion people to pick 11 people out of.
Yeah.
That's such a big, and this is what makes the NFL and stuff, is you have 330 million people in the US, and you pick an 11-man defense and an 11-man attack. You're going to get superstars and you're going to get athletes. We just don't have the ability to do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a 24 million people population that's diverted into different sports, such a vast geographical space that's hard to traverse and get around. We literally are in the biggest predicament, and it's literally a miracle that we hang on in as many sports as we do.
But we are also not sure how it necessarily came along, but we're such a winning culture too.
Yeah.
If we're not winning, we, drop the sport or stop following, or that type of thing. So I think a lot of people coming up and playing, if they're not winning or they're not the best at it, they'll go find a different sport. And that's why we have such a vast range of people in different sports, because everyone's just trying to find what they're good at, which, I don't know, is up and down. But I think also, I don't know if you had anything else to mention, but going back to the rugby union and the limit of teams, you know, you look at the league and there's 16 teams week in, week out that are versing each other. And there's, so what, you know, you got 21 people in each team. No, 17 actually in rugby league. But 17 people week in, week out for 16 teams that are playing for essentially for Australia, minus New Zealand, but still, we'll just count them for the sake of it.
Yeah.
That much exposure to the game. And how many players do we have that weren't anything special in particular when they were young, but after a couple of years in the league, grow to become something amazing?
Yeah.
And we're not getting that exposure in rugby union because you're either at the top level or you're not. Like, there's no in-between area, like we're saying. So it leaves it in such a tough spot of we're not able to give that much exposure, but when we can, we're expected to win. Like, we're expecting that we win. And because we're not winning, we're losing that winning culture. And, you know, like I said, we're going to have a drop in followers and drop in people playing the sport, because at the end of the day, like the week just went by, we know that we'll turn on the TV and watch All Blacks flog us once again and win another Bledisloe, because, you know, for all of these reasons combined.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I've lost what I was going to say, but no, you're right. And that's the thing. Like, and I just think too, with the league, is it doesn't hurt as much to lose, if you're a Roosters fan or something, to lose to the Tigers. Like, I know that'd be a bit of a shock, right? But just like, it doesn't hurt as much to lose against a club that's from another area in Australia. Yeah. Like, it's like, oh yeah, on to the next week. We still have tons of games. Yeah. Like, the Reds getting thumped by a Kiwi team is embarrassing because it sort of reflects on the Wallabies. And then, you know, and then it gets to the point where it's like, and like, I don't care about if the Brumbies lose to another Aussie team. I just hate us losing to the other opposition. Like, and that's the thing that makes league and has made it more appealing to me in the past couple of years is, like, I don't care if the Roosters lose to someone because it doesn't have big time implications. Yep. Like, on anyone but the Roosters. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't give an indication that... It doesn't,
you know, reflect on the entirety of Australia or, you know, where the Wallabies are going to be in 3 months' time because we've lost, you know, a couple games in a row. But, you know, that's also the thing, because there's such limited exposure of those players that, you know, could be playing all right, not be playing the worst, but just losing that game in specific, we're forced to choose from them as well, because we don't actually have that many people to choose from going into the Wallabies. So, you know, maybe you also do that, you adopt that losing culture at your club level, because, you know, maybe you're just not as good as a club, which you can't help sometimes, but you go into Wallabies just going, oh, you know, we lost against, you know, for example, the Blues. Now we have to verse them combined with the other 4 New Zealand teams. How do we even expect to do anything?
Yeah. No, that's true. That's a very good point. That's one I haven't really thought of either. Yeah.
But there's just so much wrong. And we've spoken, even you want to go all the way down to grassroots level, which we've both been a part of. And personally, I've been exposed to a bit more with my representative stuff. But it is also at a young age, it's a who you know what, not what you know.
Yeah.
And that is seen in a lot of sports, but it's really, really poorly seen in the rugby union, in my opinion. Like, I've had representative squads that we've had Reds, you know, people who work for the Reds come in and select the team, not know anything about the team whatsoever.
Wow.
Look at the team sheet, and this is playing on the Gold Coast. All they do, if anyone plays for TSS, they instantly put them in the team. And outside of that, I'm not necessarily saying this is the worst thing in the world, but they take all the Islanders, that's their second option, and they simply justify it with, you can teach technique, but you can't teach size. And so many kids lose their heart at such a young age because of these selection processes. And I'm not saying they're necessarily better whatsoever at playing whichever sport it is, that's not the case. But it's such a limited selection process where, like you said, they don't care. Like, they don't actually care about the game necessarily, or, you know, what their implications are. They just plan on winning right now and not winning in, you know, creating a winning future, I guess.
Yeah. Nah, yeah, I remember you telling me about that back in the day. It's bullshit. It really honestly is the way that they pick representative teams, and if they do it in that fashion. Because, I mean, look at South Africa right now. They have a tiny scrum half, even by today's standards, and they have a tiny winger who's got speed. Like, how do you know at rep level you're not cutting the guy? Like, maybe he hasn't got that speed yet, but what if he, you know, doesn't grow anymore, but then suddenly, you know, he gets to grade 10 and he's like sprinter quick. But he's already given up on footy because he didn't get the chance.
Yeah.
Because some big islander got picked over him, and like, obviously not to, but just someone with massive size got picked over him.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, and that's the thing that like, I tried to coach for, because I've been coaching the past 2 years. Is you try and pick the best squad you can, regardless of their size.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You play your best team, not who's the biggest team, which is a way to win, but doesn't always happen.
Yeah, exactly. And even like, you look at our last year at school footy, playing like when we nearly won the premiership, we literally picked off size. Like, we didn't give a shit if we didn't have massive guys.
Oh, we were coming
up against
squad.
Yeah, we were coming up against guys like scholarship teams that had brought in massive guys, and we just picked the best team week in, week out, and just trusted everyone. And I think that gives so much faith to the guy, because what I found is most often the bigger guys that weren't into rugby off the field, they didn't really give a shit about union. They were just there for their mates. But it was the little guys who felt like they had something to prove that actually started enjoying rugby as rugby and actually wanted to play.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Like, that's the thing. I think that's what our squad had when we played too, was like, we just picked guys who wanted to be there and wanted to play. And it was like, and that gives so much faith to them. Like, to little guy, at being a shorter guy myself, it's like, just to have that faith that your coach is picking you in a team to go against guys who are massive and way bigger than you. It's such a confidence boost, and it makes you feel like you belong in the sport instead of just getting palmed off because you're not 6'4" at 13.
Yeah, and it also created so much passion for our squad in particular, and we're there week in, week out playing for one another because we all had that passion, we had that drive because we wanted to do it together. It wasn't because, you know, we brought in a couple, you know, giants that were huge and we thought, oh, we'll just piggyback off them because they seem pretty good. It was, we were a team that weren't supposed to do well, but we just stuck it out together, and we were definitely came out on the better side because of it.
Yeah, that's one. Yeah, and I just look back on that year with so much like happiness and just like really joy, that like how well we worked as a team was insane. And yeah, just awesome to see.
For anyone who was part of that team and is listening, apologies for having to drag back that grand final loss, but you know, we move on.
We'll get drunk one podcast and fully rant about it, but we got robbed anyway.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at that though.
Yeah, but no, like you said, that's right, and that's just bullshit. I'm still pissed off about hearing about like that stuff that you went through with selection. It's such a blight on the game, and that would honestly be my dream job, is to just run around to rep playoffs and just watch players and actually pick the players that are good and try and pick apart the players that are good, instead of just walking in and going, oh, this kid's TSS, this kid's massive, no one else matters. Like, and that's the thing, like you said, that's hurting the game, because you're just kicking kids out or not giving them making them feel like they don't have a chance at this sport, and then they just lose interest. But
like for anyone listening, another selection process that I went through, it was that same mentality, and not one, so I'm a flanker myself, not one flanker was selected in this entire process. There was not a single flanker of any description that was selected. They just chose a bunch of number 8s or second rowers and went, oh, we'll fill them in at flankers because, you know, they tend to have an extra 10, 15, 20 kilo and a couple inches on top, and that was their way to win. It wasn't, let's go with these guys who have played flanker all their life and love this position, know how to play it. Like, for example, you adopt the mentality, and as you would know, you jump off the side of a scrum and you're running straight for the number 10, and that's your goal, and it's to get straight over that first ruck, where these guys who haven't played that position think, oh yeah, I'll just slowly run off from the scrum as I normally do, and not to discredit any of them, but it's more than just your size or who you are. It's also what you know. Like, it's
Yeah, no,
if
you're
you've
right.
had that exposure, that experience to playing a given position, you're going to play it better. And maybe long term that's not the case. And like their mentality, we can teach technique, but we can't teach size. And maybe you can teach them technique and they become an amazing player in that position, but that's not guaranteed either.
Yeah, exactly. And just to like go on with you there, I'm reading a book by Kobe's trainer, and just the amount that the NBA guys do to and this is going to seem really off topic, but I'll get back on, is like they cut out everything just to focus on what they want. So it's like you said, you grow up playing as flanker, and you learn like all the little things that just come natural, like you said, like tearing off the scrum, trying to get to every ruck. Like, that's years and years and years of things, and then that means that once you've got all that, that's just your go-to, and then you can build on that. And that's what made you, not to put you in an awkward position, but that's what made you such a good player, is you knew what you had to do as a flanker, and you did more because you'd spent years being a flanker.
Yep, and because you do those things without even thinking about it. Like,
yeah, exactly.
The whole thing, if you do something 1,000 times, it just becomes second nature, and that's exactly what it was. You do that, you think about running that certain direction or doing something a certain way that you don't have to think about, and you're already looking at the next step, or what more can I do on top of this, because you're not thinking about that thing. Like, our brain can't think of two things at one time, but we can adopt the ability to do one thing and not have to think about it at all. So it gives us the ability, and in my opinion, that's what made me a great player. Like you said, it was that I could be doing one thing but already thinking about the next thing. Like, it's and this is why I disagree with the selection process. I consider myself a good footballer because I was a smart footballer.
Yeah. I agree.
It's almost thriving yourself on being the smartest person in the room. Like, it's this being the smartest person on the field, of knowing where to hit, what to hit, how to do something, the given technique you're going to do, that makes you a good player as well.
Yeah.
It's like, compared to the majority of the players we were playing against, I was not big in comparison. So, that doesn't always win you a game either.
No, it really doesn't. Like, even, like, you look at us, like, our final year when we bloody went to and thumped them, and they had massive guys that they brought it on. I'll cut out the school name so we don't get into trouble, but, like, you just go and play sides with massive players, and, it's just that like
game
that.
Ended out, like, 38-0 or something. Like, we just absolutely thumped them, even though their squad was, each player was bigger than us. Like, we were tiny, and we looked like we were 2 years younger in comparison.
And interestingly enough, like you said, with how you do something 1,000 times, it becomes second nature. That's sort of what we trained as a squad.
Yeah.
Like, our tactic was, we do this, we do this, we do this, and then maybe we look for something else.
Yeah.
Like, we have run like a crash ball or something, and then we clear out, and then it's on to the next thing. Like, everyone just getting that routine and stuff. And that's, I think, what makes Hooper such a good player. And obviously why I make comparisons to you is, like, you guys play smart, and that's just what makes all of this so annoying. To get sort of back on topic, is you might be cutting out kids that are like you guys, that play smart and may not have the size, but play smart, and you're just cutting them out and losing them to the game forever. And it's such a waste, because all you get is a kid who's got size, and then 2 years later, he's not, like, everyone else has grown besides him, and you've just wasted 2 years of rep squad coaching on a guy who's now no longer useful, and he's lost interest in the game.
Yeah.
And he might have only had it because he got picked over guys because of his size. We're just shooting ourselves in the foot in Aussie rugby. And yeah, I've ranted a lot. I apologise if I've gone off topic, but it's just annoying.
Yeah. And I think we probably move on to the next topic, unless we should.
I apologise to everyone. That was like 40 minutes of rugby talk. So.
Yeah, we'll probably come back next week and talk about a few more things, because I think there was a few things we both didn't get to that we wanted to, but we're just going to move on and get to our second topic, because moving on to some predictions for the NFL, we need to cover this before the season starts. So I think we're going to move on to that. So the NFC predictions, for anyone who doesn't know anything about the NFL, the whole thing is split into like conferences and divisions. So there's two conferences. There's the NFC and the AFC. So we're going to run through the NFC today, go through each division, what we're thinking, how we think teams are going to, line up and how they're going to perform and what the end result might be for them. So if you'd like to kick us off, which order do you want to go through?
I reckon we go last to first.
Last to first. Which division do you reckon will kick off? And you kick us off as well.
Oh, we doing divisions? I was just going to do the conference overall.
Okay, you're going to do the conference overall. I think we should probably just run through the divisions just so... I think we also need to explain that. So in the NFL, the winner of each division, no matter what your record is, the winner of each division goes to the playoffs. And there's 2 wild card positions. So the 2 people following them with the highest records, no matter what division they come from, they can come from the same division, will then make it to the playoffs. So I think it'll just make a bit more sense if we run through each division, just so, we'll tend to get the top spot.
Yep, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, I'll start with, we'll obviously start with the NFC North then. I've got the Chicago Bears finishing, I've got the Chicago Bears in first, finishing the season with 12-4. I've then got the Packers second with an 11-5 record. I've got the Vikings third with a 7-9, and then I've got the Lions fourth with 5-11.
5-11, yep. I think that's pretty reasonable overall. I think, in my opinion, I'm just grabbing it now. I think, the Bears, I'm definitely up there. I reckon they're probably going to finish about 11-5, but yeah, that 12-4 is pretty accurate. I think they're probably the strongest defense by a country mile compared to anyone else. Like, it's almost laughable how good they are compared to everyone else. And, the signing of Khalil Mack, obviously, that occurred 2 years ago and came in for last year was unreal. And, he performed just as well as anyone could have hoped. So they're just so dominant there. Yep, I agree. I think the Packers, I have them going probably 10-6.
Yep,
I think
that's fair.
I think this year they obviously suffered with a little bit of injury from Aaron Rodgers, but the team as a whole has just gotten so much better. Like, the last 2 years, how much they've built in, especially their defense. Like, they have some offensive players who have really come to their own. Like, Devontae Adams is one of the best receivers in the league now.
Yeah.
And one of the most reliable as well. It really helps Aaron Rodgers giving him such a weapon. But I think their defense has just built so much, and they've been a team, a franchise for so long that's relied on Aaron Rodgers to carry them. But their defense is actually going to be able to work this season. So hopefully they can take some of the pressure off him. But then, I have Vikings going 9-7. I think they're a good team overall. And then, the Lions, I think I have them going probably 5-11.
Yep. No, that's fair. I think what's interesting to me this year with the NFC particularly is a lot of it's really top heavy. Like, all the divisions seem to be really top heavy. Like, you've got, obviously in the North, you've got the Bears. Like, the North is very competitive. There's
it's
probably
one of the most
3
competitive
teams.
League.
I might say it is one of the most competitive divisions in the NFL, really, because the Bears, Packers, and Vikings, pick 2 of those, and they're probably going to make it to the playoff, or at least do really well.
Yep, I think 2 of those are definitely playoff teams. I think they are, that division has the capability that you can almost guarantee 2 are going to be walking through, minus someone like Aaron Rodgers gets an injury. But I think, even I have said they're probably just going to finish above, they're just going to finish with a winning record. But I think the Vikings are a very underrated team. 2 seasons ago, we were saying they had the best defense, and they haven't really changed all too much, that defense, and they have one of the best wide receivers corps. Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs are probably, I don't know if you agree, but I reckon they're probably the best, duo now at wide receiver that you have. After AB and Juju have split, they're definitely up there for the best duo and starting.
Yeah,
receiver.
I actually think that's really fair. They might be the best, maybe not the best core the Vikings have, but they definitely are the best duo in the NFL for the top two receivers. They complement each other's game so much.
Yeah.
Like they're opposites, and it just gives the Vikings so much to play with.
Yep, absolutely. And what do you think just on the Lions as well?
Well, I think the Lions are in a sticky situation where they're probably easily, like most predictably, the worst team out of those four. And being in a division that's that competitive really makes it hard for them.
Yeah, when you have to verse six games against these three teams that we've just spoken about being so good, it's tough.
It is. And like they've made some really good additions to their squad. I think they're going to impress. I think they'll really push the Bears, the Packers, and the Vikings in the games that they play. They'll push them right to the edge, but I just don't think they have enough to win over those teams. I think it'll be a lot closer than it has been in previous years, but I don't think the Lions, I just think they suffer as the odd one out of a really, really good division.
Yeah. And I don't know, in my opinion, I look at Matt Stafford. I think he's actually an extremely underrated quarterback. I've really liked him for many years, but he has not once, but since Megatron Calvin Johnson's left them, they haven't had a decent receiver there. Like, they had Golden Tate there only the start of last year, who I think's pretty average.
He's solid.
A solid wide receiver, but obviously went over the Philadelphia Eagles. They just seem to be losing players. I'm really excited for TJ Hawkinson that came to them in the draft. What was he, first or second round draft pick? I think it was first round draft pick.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think it's going to be a really good addition. Like, if he comes out, like, some people were relating him to like Gronk standards. Like, they thought he was going to play that same game and have the safe hands like Rob Gronkowski did, and it makes it exciting that hopefully Matt Stafford can have a reliable receiver there. But they've had so much going in and out.
Yeah,
I think of their team, like key players, like that it hurts them, and they haven't been able to have any consistency. So I think they're still not going to be able to put together. Maybe give it to them a few years. I think, not that teams in the NFL do this on purpose really, but they could essentially tank and get a few decent picks over the next few years, and they could actually become quite a strong team. But, I think it also comes down to, we talked about the other week about, for a team to go deep in Super Bowl, they either need a quarterback that can carry the entire team or one that's on their rookie contract. And I think Matt Stafford's really in the middle, that I don't think they'd come close to a Super Bowl, but they could actually become a really competitive team.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think you really are right. And the trouble, I think that they should tank because, like you said, they're in the middle. Like, even just not even with Stafford in regards to Stafford, but just their whole squad they could do something, but it's just iffy. And they're good enough to be competitive, but then that doesn't get them high draft picks, so they can't do the massive changes that they need. But they can't win enough at this stage to make a deep run in the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a really sticky situation.
Or even get close to the playoffs. Yeah, that's the issue with them, unfortunately. All right, I think we skip along to your boys in the NFC East next.
Yes.
How do you think that's going to end up?
Well, I think this is probably the weakest division in the NFL, or at least the most top heavy. Sorry. Because having the Giants and the Redskins easily two lottery, they're going to be looking for top 5 picks, I reckon, this year each. I've got the Eagles going 12-4.
Yep.
Because of that. I've then got the Cowboys going 8-8 because I assume that the Zeke holdout's going to go for the whole year.
Yep.
So I think that that's going to hurt us against other NFC teams, but I really think 4 of those wins are guaranteed against the Giants and the Redskins, and I think it's going to be a real tough year for the Cowboys if we don't figure out how to click without Zeke. So I've got us going at the Cowboys going 8-8, and then I've got the Giants and the Redskins both going 4-12.
Okay. Yep. Fair enough. I think just on that point with Zeke, in my opinion, I don't think he's holding out. If he holds out 2 years out from his contract, it's actually embarrassing in my opinion. Like, you look at Melvin Gordon, for example, I think that's going to be a repeat. And, this is also more for next week's podcast, but I think Melvin Gordon's definitely going to hold out this entire season because I don't think they're going to meet what he's asking.
Yeah.
But I think Zeke's got to come back. Like 2 years out, you can't be requiring money this soon.
That's true.
So I think he comes back. I think maybe he misses the first game or two, but I think we'll probably see him after that. But I have the Eagles going 11-5. I have the Cowboys going 9-7. The Redskins going 5-11, and the Giants going 4-12.
Nice. Pretty even.
I think
pretty similar.
Yeah, pretty similar overall. I think the Eagles made the playoffs last year with a very injury-prone team, like a very injured team. Sorry, like their entire defense at one point, they didn't have a starting or backup. I think cornerback playing. Like they were down to third-string cornerbacks, or I think they had a wide receiver playing cornerback in one of the games that I watched.
I feel like they
were
did.
Very hurt team. Like, and Falcons were in the same position, but we'll get to them soon. But I think they're just going to come back bigger and stronger. And if Carson Wentz can stay healthy, I think could potentially go bigger than that 11-5. Like the year they won the Super Bowl, they were unbelievable. And I actually think they've probably only improved on that team, but just haven't been able to put a healthy season together. Like there's only been one season in between, but they haven't had a healthy season since. So I think they're definitely, that division's going to maintain its record. I can't remember what it is exactly, but we've run through this a couple times that they haven't had a single winner in that division win 2 years in a row since like mid 2000s or something.
Yeah,
like,
I think that's it.
It's a pretty crazy, like it might be since like 04 or 06 or something. So it's a pretty cool stat to follow along with, but I think that's just going to go again. After Cowboys won it last year, I think Eagles have got it this year again, and they're just a really good team. Cowboys, I think you're probably more fit. What do you think is likely for them? You know, what's going to go well and what's going to go wrong?
Well, I think... I just think we get hurt by Zeke. Like if he holds out, if he doesn't and he comes back and we get a full season of Amari and Zeke and Dak, that could be really interesting. But like I said, I assumed Zeke would hold out for the whole year, which probably is a bit stupid because like you said, he's 2 years out. He probably will come back. It'll just be whether we start well enough without him that he sort of just slots back in, or we start terribly and need him and pay him whatever he wants. So I like you said, I think he will be back, but it's iffy to know at this point. You can't really predict, but I don't know. I think one of the things with the Cowboys too is we go well. We're like the Wallabies. We go well and then we perform really average.
Yeah.
So I think that might be this year that we go average again and then pick it back up next year.
I think having a look, there was another thing that I heard mention of. I don't know if you've heard the same thing, but there's actually talks that Amari Cooper might be out is potentially missing the first game, maybe even the second. I think he has something wrong with his foot at the moment.
Oh, really?
I don't know if you've heard about that.
I had seen it, and I didn't think it was anything major more than a preseason injury, but wow.
It's nothing major. Like, it's a pretty minor injury, but there was talks that he might be missing that first game of the season. But I think it's not going to hurt too much, and I think you're going to see Zeke come back. Like, I'm just looking at your schedule at the moment. Week 1, you have Giants at home, which we've just spoken about being a relatively bad team. I think we're going to further that in a second, but they're not great. You have Washington away week 2, which once again, we don't have big predictions for, but being away, that might be a bit of a difficult game, but we can only see. And then week 3, you have Miami Dolphins at home, which are one of the worst teams in the league. So I think even with Zeke potentially missing, like he could miss the first 3 games of the season, you could actually end up 3-0 and still be good and come back and he just rocks up to play. But it's that week 4 game you have Saints, which you can almost draw in an L, and then the week after you have Green Bay. So the first 3 weeks you might get away with it, but after that your schedule gets a lot tougher. So yeah, it depends if Zeke comes back and what his demands are, and who knows how Dak performs without him.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the things I've noticed too, is a lot of the NFC teams this year that I sort of have doing average actually have really easy starting schedules. So they shoot out to a really, really good and then drop back off in the second half of the season when the games start getting a bit harder. Like, I think, not that we haven't spoken about the division yet, but I think the 49ers are in that boat and potentially the Panthers too, maybe.
Yep.
Just shooting out to real big, easy games at the start to warm up and then falling back off.
Yep. And then just to finish off, I think Giants are just a team in huge turmoil at the moment with a huge rebuild to come. Like, they've all obviously brought in Daniel Jones, which, I don't know, do you think he's going to get many starts this season?
I think this is honestly the worst timeline for the Giants, is having a guy who did well in preseason, who, like, fans will think can knock down the door of Eli Manning, and then you're losing games and then everyone's calling for Daniel Jones. I think he should be essentially redshirted his rookie year, and if whoever you say is going to start, whoever starts week 1 should play the rest of the season. I really think, barring an injury. So if Eli is, just let Eli play all 16 games. Yep. Like, don't throw Daniel Jones to the cauldron too early. Like, let him have a year to learn.
I completely agree with that. I think Eli Manning, even though, but just take a quick step back. The coaches have already said that. They've actually come out and said that there's not a quarterback competition here. Like, there's essentially no chance Daniel Jones is playing. We're sticking with Eli Manning. I think that's really good. I think, because I don't think he's at the same standard, but he could be. He could surprise us all. But I think we need to see a situation like that happen in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, of that year to sit under a quality quarterback. Like, Eli Manning, as much as we laugh at him now, was a really good quarterback. Same thing, and just let Daniel Jones develop under him. The same way Kansas City, the Chiefs, did that with Patrick Mahomes. They had Alex Smith there, who's a really good quarterback, like a really good, solid quarterback, and let Patrick Mahomes just grow under him until, he outgrew him and they made the trade for Alex Smith, and now they're geniuses. I think the same thing needs to occur there. But the rest of the team's been in turmoil. Obviously, the Odell Beckham trade, there's positives and negatives to it. The truth is, everyone saw it as a really bad thing. But Odell Beckham, since his rookie year, has only played like 50-60% of games. Like, he's injured a lot or not playing a lot. So I think you see a situation of the locker room becomes a bit more level. But you still got Saquon Barkley. The biggest thing is if he gets injured, like, because they've got such a heavy reliant upon him. If anything happens to him, they're in trouble.
They are. They really are.
And then I think Redskins are just in a big, my heart's with them a little bit. I like them out of this division, but they are in a big rebuilding phase. Like, I think Dwayne Haskins is a great quarterback, and they could potentially see him actually starting off. Alex Smith is not coming back anytime soon, obviously, with his broken leg, so he's not happening. They signed Case Keenum, didn't they? I've heard nothing about him whatsoever, like, in talks of starting. But then they have Colt McCoy, who I think's a relatively awful quarterback, and they'd be silly not to give Dwayne Haskins that exposure. So I think it'd actually be really interesting to see him start this year. I don't know how he'd necessarily go, but that could be an interesting side. Like, they have Eagles and then Cowboys. Like, that's a tough start
for
them.
It really is.
And then even following up with the Chicago Bears the next game, like, it'd be unfortunate to see it happen, but, maybe exposure's what he needs to.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And then moving on, I think this is probably the most boring and straightforward one, the NFC West. In my opinion, I have Rams probably finishing on top of the conference with this. I have them going 12-4. I have the Seahawks going 8-8, 49ers 7-9, and the Cardinals going 3-13.
Wow, a bit different to me, but yeah, I think that's I think that's entirely possible. What you said, I really do. I think Rams are still easily the strongest team in that division. Seahawks, I think they're iffy right now. They've got injuries for the draft picks that they've picked. Like, obviously DK Metcalf's out, and he was meant to be a big weapon. They've had retirements. The Legion of Boom is gone. It's really going to be how much can Russell Wilson backpack this team. And I'd be surprised if the Seahawks make playoffs as a really strong team. I'd be surprised to see a season where Russell Wilson doesn't win MVP.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, in my opinion, I think the rest of the conference is too strong to see two teams come out of that division
True.
for the wild card positions. But Russell Wilson's also, like we said, one of the best quarterbacks and one of the quarterbacks that can actually carry a franchise. So he could surprise us all. And Pete Carroll's not a bad coach either.
No,
Behind
exactly.
him. He is really good. And Chris Carson, obviously, I think it was his first season last year, really proved himself. And he's not exceptional, but he took the workload that he was given and handled it well. So we could see something. But I personally, what did you have each team going, sorry?
Oh, wow. I had the Rams going 11-5. I have the Seahawks going 10-6. I have the Niners going 8-8, and then I have the Cards going 3-13.
Okay, so we have Cards going the same and the Rams going relatively the same.
Yeah.
I just don't see Seahawks going that well. I think
I got a bit trigger happy doing the predictions. I think I went, Seahawks could win that one. Seahawks could win that one. I really believe in Russell Wilson a lot, so I think that did temper me a bit, but I think, that's the way it'll finish. It'll be Rams, Seahawks, 49ers, Cards, and you're probably right. I think the Seahawks might just miss out on playoffs.
We can definitely agree on that. I think, and we'll come into it next, I think there's just too much talent outside for Seahawks to make it. I think potentially they could go 9-7, 10-6 and still not make it just because of the quality in the rest of the conference. This conference seems like a team is either exceptional or really bad.
Yeah, and there's a lot of exceptional teams.
Yeah, exactly.
I must say.
But yeah, I think they're just slowly going downhill, this team, and I think maybe give them a couple years and it'll start to pick up on the backside of Russell Wilson's career. But for the time being, I think they're going to be just making the playoffs like they did last year or just missing out. And then I think for the 49ers are becoming stronger and stronger each year, and they're starting to become exciting with Jimmy G and obviously Nick Bosa coming in. So I'm excited to watch them, but I don't think they have it all there together yet.
Yeah, that's true.
Finish above third in that division.
Yeah.
And they have George Kittle, who's a really good, reliable receiver, but the actual wide receiver corps isn't too strong. They got Marquise Goodwin and is Deebo Samuel there? And
I think so. And Dante Pettis is the other
Dante
guy.
Pettis. Yeah. Dante Pettis, I think, is going to surprise a few people. He's pretty strong, but yeah, I just don't think they have it there. And then Cardinals, Kyler Murray should hopefully be good and interesting, but they're just a very lackluster team that I don't see them winning too many games this year.
I think the Cardinals, like the Dolphins, have the worst roster, and I really think the 3 games that I have the Cards winning is just me putting it down to Kyler Murray brilliance.
Okay.
I really think that. I think the team is just too shit for him or for them to win. Yeah. And I just think the 3 games that they win will be miracles, literal miracles. Otherwise, this team could potentially go 0-16.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a bit of a hot take, but
that
1-15 at least.
Yeah, I think the only games that I had them winning, I can't remember who it was against specifically, but it was against bad teams and at home. I don't see these guys getting an away win at all on the road. It's if they're at home, the conditions are right, and they just, put together a really good performance and surprise everyone. But, yeah, like you said, if they finished 0-16, I think Kyler Murray probably adds too much unexpectedness.
Yeah, he does.
To the team.
He adds a lot.
So I think they probably wouldn't finish 0-16 like we saw Browns do a few years ago. But, I don't see them getting too many wins. And then, obviously, to round it out, the final division, what do you have? Yes, the South. What do you have?
I had the Saints. Interestingly enough, I haven't been thinking about the Saints that heavily because I feel like their time had passed to win a Super Bowl. But when I went through with my predictions, I've got them finishing 11-5.
Yep.
I've got the Falcons going 10-6. I've got the Panthers going 8-8, and then I've got Tampa going 2-14.
Surprisingly enough, that is almost spot on with mine.
Really?
I have the Saints going 11-5. I have the Falcons going 11-5, but the Saints finishing on top and Falcons squeaking in with wild card. I have the Panthers going 8-8 and the Buccaneers going 2-14.
Wow. Yeah, Tampa's terrible. We don't even need to do a preview for them.
Yeah, Tampa's a bad team. Jameis Winston is still yet to prove himself after 4 years and is still just not there. They don't have any good player they seem to lose over this offseason, and they're just falling into a bigger pit than they already have, which is a surprise. Apologies to any Tampa fans, but that's just the way I see it.
Just side note, do you know any Tampa fans?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, it's a rough situation at the moment. I think I have limited people who follow the sport alongside me, and, you know, they tend to follow the big names, so
Yeah.
that's not too much of a surprise. Half of them probably wouldn't even know who the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were.
Yeah.
Moving on,
Yeah.
though. What do you see going forward with the Panthers?
Panthers, I would say 8-8. I mean, Cam Newton got hurt today, but I did these predictions before that. I just think going up against Falcons, who are a lot healthier, like you said, they will be this year, and then the Saints, obviously, again, makes the Panthers really tough, considering they haven't really added anything this offseason. They drafted well. They picked up some good players in free agency, but I guess it's just, yeah, I can't see them. I see them just scraping, really.
Yeah.
Like, they added Gerald McCoy. Actually, that's it, really.
Yeah.
They added Gerald McCoy from Tampa. So maybe their defense now, I mean, I don't know. Maybe
I still don't
having
think it's
McCoy,
great.
yeah, it's not great, but maybe it makes them a bit more unguessable. But, I mean, just being in the division with the Saints and hopefully a healthy Falcons for the whole year is, I think it's just too much for this Panthers team.
Yep, and I'm just reading now too that the title is Cam suffers foot sprain, leaves in walking boot, and, you know, his issue wasn't his arm today. He's left with a ankle sprain, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So that hurts them for the start of the season. But my first point was going to be Cam Newton is too injury prone that we don't even know if we're going to get a full season out of him.
Yeah,
and I think that proves that. That's his first game back to action since the end of last season, week 15. And
hurt his foot.
Yep, injured again. Like, I don't think it's too serious. We might even see him back for the first week, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, they're a very mediocre team who have some good options. Like, Christian McCaffrey is one of my favorite running backs in the league. Like, he just has everything.
He does.
But that's kind of where the list ends, I think, in my opinion. Like, Greg Olson's getting up there in age, and their wide receivers, like DJ Moore isn't bad, and I've lost their other wide receiver, but, like, it's not a great wide receiver. Curtis Samuel, it's not a great wide receiver court, but, like, they're a solid team. But yeah, like you said, there's too many strong competitors. And the Saints, for you, I'd like to personally finish on the Falcons. I have a big whoop story to go for them.
Well, the Saints for me really was just, I mean, let me see what I've got in my notes. Yeah, I think pretty much the Saints just being like the same squad, really. I mean,
yeah,
like that's just how I predicted. They've still got Breeze, they've still got Kamara. I mean, they lost Ingram, they lost some of their pieces that sort of made them be able to do substitutions. But I mean, I think maybe the window has closed now for them to win a Super Bowl, but this is still a very, very good team and still a very, very deep playoff run team. I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the conference final game, or at least pushing whoever gets there
exactly.
to the end.
There's a few teams that you could see in the conference final, but I think they're definitely probably up there for contention. I think, exactly what you said. They're pretty much the exact same team as last season, minus Mark Ingram, but I think Latavius Murray will come in and he'll probably step up to the plate, and, like, Alvin Kamara was still the heart of that, even without Mark Ingram. Like, Mark Ingram was that 2 yards out, get over the line, which a lot of running backs
Kamara
can do.
a rest guy.
Yeah, exactly. But Kamara eats the yards up and is a really solid player there. So I don't think they're going to be hurt too much by that. But yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is that they're pretty much the same team as last season, who are probably going to make a very similar run, if not just slightly worse or slightly better.
Yeah, exactly.
And then to finish off on the Falcons, I have extremely high hopes for the Falcons. I think we could potentially see another 2015 run.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if Matt Ryan wins MVP, but at that point, I think they have, we spoke about the Vikings probably have the best 1 and 2. I think Falcons probably have the best wide receiver corps. Like Julio Jones, I think, with the issues with Antonio Brown, I think he's probably the best wide receiver in the league now. I think Calvin Ridley has come in at that slot and is just dominating and really surprised everyone off his first season. He's just unreal. Like, he's so quick.
He is.
Austin Hooper's a solid tight end. Like, he's not one of the best in the league, but he's a good option there as well. And I can't remember for the life of me their other wide receiver, but like, he's a good player, good solid player as well.
Isn't it Sanu?
Yeah,
Or
Sanu.
did he go to Denver?
Yep, no, Sanu's still there, and he's like a good solid player. So they have great options there. Their defense is unbelievable. Like, I don't have the list of players on me right now, but they have an unbelievable defense.
Yeah.
That, like the Philadelphia Eagles, were injured for a majority of the last season, and that's what caused so many issues with them. I think they're probably in my bets to see them in a Super Bowl at the end of this season.
Yeah, thinking about it now, like really thinking about their squad, I don't think you're wrong either. This is definitely, I mean, due to my records and shit being off, I actually don't have them making the playoffs because I have them at 10-6, same as the Seahawks, and the Seahawks go through on tiebreaker. But really, I reckon the Falcons will go through and really push for a Super Bowl run. They just have to. I really think same thing though is it sort of rests on whether Devontae Freeman stays healthy.
Yeah, that was the thing, and that was the biggest thing. I actually watched their first 2 games of last season where they versus the Philadelphia Eagles, and Devontae Freeman copped his first hit then that he was a little bit banged up, and then the second week he got injured and then didn't play the rest of the season. Like, Devontae Freeman I actually really like as a running back. Like, I think he's that smaller guy who's just really quick, really agile, and he's really fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I really like him there. Matt Ryan, he was in my top 10 quarterbacks, and I don't think he's able to carry a franchise, but he just has so many weapons.
Yeah.
He just has to keep it cool, be a good pocket passer, and that's all they need.
Yeah.
And then, Julio Jones is just such a safe option. Like, he's the best player that they have there, essentially, like, you could ask for.
Yeah, I think the problem with Julio really is I think he might have even been the best receiver in the league last year too.
Yep.
Just he doesn't get the press and doesn't get his name out there as much because the Falcons sort of are a bit inconsistent or suffer from injuries.
Yeah, they just had the injuries last season.
Because if you, you got to think, like, I think about it, like, if you put Julio Jones on any other team in the NFL, they definitely get better.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. Like, I think last season going into it, I would have said Antonio Brown and Julio Jones are my 1 and 2.
Yep, same. It's same going into this season
in
anyway.
that order. I think Antonio Brown's probably dropped off a little bit. I think he probably falls to 3, in my opinion.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
And DeAndre Hopkins. I think DeAndre Hopkins was probably the best receiver last year. Like, he was just unbelievable. Like,
he didn't drop a catch at all.
He did not drop one catch all of last season. Like, that is ridiculous. Like, for anyone, no matter how good you are, to have a stat like that's just beyond ridiculous. But just quickly going through with the Falcons defense, like, Grady Jarrett at defensive tackle, Deion Jones at linebacker, Keanu Neal at safety. Like, in every line of defense, they have such a good player. And, like, that's just to name, like, some of their best players. Like, they just have people who can win a game in every single position. Yeah. So, whether people agree or not, I think Falcons, I think we're actually going to see them in the Super Bowl. Yeah. I think the conference final, in my opinion, is between Falcons and Rams.
Wow, that's going to be electric.
Yeah.
That's going to be, if that ends up, that'll be a sick game.
That is 2 teams. Actually, sorry, I'm going to take my thing back. We actually didn't talk about the Rams at all just because they're so dominant.
Yeah.
But I think Rams probably have the best wide receiver corp and Falcons number 2.
Yeah, actually, that's
just
true.
Obviously, on note with my prediction for the conference final, I think Rams are in that same page. Like, they have one of the best defenses around, Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters, although I wasn't that impressed with him last season at cornerback. And, obviously Aaron Donald, who's one of the most talented players we've seen come out of the league. And, he's hasn't been around that long and people are already talking about he's probably the best defensive tackle ever.
Yeah, he's insane.
And, I think anyone would put money on him being Defensive Player of the Year again. Sean McVay is such a good offensive coach. Like, he's unbelievable. Jared Goff's only going to get better year in, year out. And with the wide receiver corp he's got there, like, Brandon Cooks, Cooper Kupp, and Robert Woods is such a good 3 wide receivers that they're all, like, equivalent. Like, they're all, like, around that top 20 mark of wide receivers.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. It's not like, okay, so you look at, so maybe Falcons, for example, you got Julio Jones. Actually, let's go to Kansas City. That, you're going to consistently see people double teaming Tyreek Hill because he's that one good option they have deep. But Rams have got 3 good options deep that it leaves them with so many options. And then, not to even mention that Todd Gurley, while I'm currently wearing his jersey, is the best running back in the league, in my opinion, when healthy. The only issue is he's got arthritis in his knee, and we don't know what's going to happen with him this season. His workload is going to be decreased, but can he maintain where he was at last season, that level of quality, while having a reduced workload? That's the only issue for the Rams, I reckon.
I hope he can.
Yeah, I certainly do too. And if he does, it's either... Yeah, in my opinion, I think I'll ask you in a second, but I think that's my opinion. It's Rams and Falcons in that conference final. Maybe Saints go in, I think Bears probably fall out. I think they just have a defense and not an offense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see Rams and Falcons in the conference final going for the Super Bowl. But me asking my question, who do you see probably in that conference final, just off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, in the conference final, I mean, really, it depends on who is a wild card and who's not.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I mean, like you said, I think the Rams are there regardless, just because of their defense and the fact that you also add in, like, they have probably the most consistent and possibly the best wide receiver core, and then you only add, they've got solid tight ends and then Gurley out of the backfield with that. That makes them so explosive.
Yeah.
And then they've got, really solid defense. Like, even though they lost Ndamukong Suh and LaMarcus Joyner, they've added Eric Weddle and Clay Matthews.
Yeah.
So I really think that's a stronger defense.
Yeah. I think...
Or at least a more consistently stronger defense. I think Suh went missing a bit. He seems to go missing in games.
Yeah, he was very up and down. Eric Weddle's getting a little bit to the back of his career.
Yeah, but still a good pickup.
Still such a good leader, like, of the team.
Yeah.
Like, he's got so much experience and he's still a good player. So, yeah, arguably they just got better or more consistent. So, yeah, who do you see versus the Rams?
Like I said, I think the Saints... I really don't know. Like, I've got the Saints, probably the Packers, the Seahawks, or the Falcons, and the Eagles all making playoffs. I really think it'll be either the Eagles or the Falcons.
Okay.
Just depends on who falls on what side of the schedule.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing too. It's who falls on what side of the schedule, and that's me not looking whatsoever. Like, Rams and Falcons could verse each other in wild card for all we know, and that's completely impossible.
God, that'd be insane.
Like, that they could verse each other in the conference final, but yeah, I just see them being the best too.
Yeah. I think, that's fair. I'd go Falcons or Eagles this year, I think, against the Rams, the Rams, so.
Yep. All right, so is that finished up, or did you want to
I think it is.
Make mention?
I'm done. I just think Tampa and the Cardinals are just going to suffer this year. I feel sorry for them, but that's the way of the game.
Yeah, and, that's exactly it. You see Cardinals go down again, and if they finish last, that's 2 years in a row with first round picks, and that's exactly what Browns have, and our Browns are talked about, which will, a little bit of preview next week. People are trying to talk about that they're going to be finishing top of the division and making a Super Bowl run, so yeah, it's not the worst thing either. That is the fun of NFL, and we mentioned in the first podcast how good NFL is compared to Australian sports. Obviously AFL has it, but personally I don't watch all too much AFL, so I can't really stand up for it. But the draft is such an excellent idea that
it
makes anyone have a chance of winning the Super Bowl, where you look at, the EPL, which the EPL is won by money, or, the league, it's just whoever's, the newest dynasty, whoever has the best coach, whoever gets the best generational talent. So that's the fun of NFL, and one of the reasons why I love it. But yeah, if you'd like to finish this up, Ethan?
Just thank you to everyone that listened again this week. Thanks for the feedback. Thank you to everyone that signed up to our fantasy league. We got that full now, so we're sort of doing these previews for that, and just thanks to everyone.
Yes, very, very excited for the fantasy
Yeah.
draft. It should be interesting. Hopefully we get that out one of the weekends, but excited for that. Thank you for everyone who joined it. And once again, if anyone would like to listen to the podcast and not following us on Instagram, it's nooneasked_podcast. Go chuck us a follow. Like we said, there's plenty of content on there for all of you guys. So hopefully we can get some fan interaction. You guys really enjoy it.
Yeah, and leave us feedback, guys. We love it, and we love to hear that people are listening, and we like criticism because I think it helps us improve. So
it makes us better.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye.